titled this. You know my name, I assume, Michael Boyce, and I am employed by the university in two different capacities. I have two part-time jobs here currently, one as the coordinator for the Digital Literacy Center, of which Teresa Dobson is the director, and Stephen Carrier is the former acting director. And also I am a managing editor for an online journal called Educational Insights, which is sponsored by CCEFI. It's right across the hall there, and which, again, Teresa Dobson is the incoming academic editor, and Lou Bells is the current academic editor. Titled this Digitizing, because it's kind of what it's a reflection on the way that the term is deployed in a variety of different circumstances. It's a term that has a great deal of cultural and industrial currency.
Of course, I've been tapped as kind of the primary person to consult widely in the faculty, but try to bring together a learning experience around media in education.
Okay.
So based on your description, I was very interested in your thoughts about what teachers today need to be thinking about in terms of digitalizing and media. So that's kind of the interest that I bring today.
In the context of teacher education, we know there are a lot of kind of like interesting and lively issues there, like how can digital applications, technologies, and tools, etc., be used in the context of pedagogy.
Yeah, and also, I guess speaking as the mother of two children who are online all the time, and going onto the MIT site and using Scratch to create their own video games, and it's a whole new world, right? Like even teachers that we prepared not that long ago are going to have young people in their classrooms, and if we don't do something different, they are definitely going to leave. I mean, my son's only 9, and I'm already saying, wonder when he might drop out of high school, right? Seriously.
Which is to say, how can these applications, tools, etc., be deployed in the classroom to help teach? Yet you put a certain kind of color on your comment there on it, which is maybe not yet something we're quite addressing, but could. Which is to say, it's sort of like the teacher-student relationship, actually. It's the kind of thing that happens when your students are beyond the teachers in some respect. Because this is all toys and things that is part of their normal way of going about doing their lives. Is that it's an organic literacy that they're developing, the kids.
Yeah.
Whereas for a lot of the teachers, it's not an organic literacy, it's one that they have to really acquire.
Yeah.
But not only do they have to acquire it, but they have to, in some respects, master it in relationship to whatever the requirements of the school they're in are, in order to use it and teach it effectively. And that's a really great challenge, because you have all these people kind of like dragging around in another analogy. In Ferraris and Maseratis, used to driving maybe an automatic Beetle or something, and it's hard to catch up with them. So I think that's an interesting problem, and my own reflections about how to approach that, because it has two possible courses, I think. There's the institutional course, which is kind of like training teachers. Training the teachers so they know how to use these applications and tools, and we partly kind of facilitate in that respect. Like smart boards, for instance. Teach teachers how to use smart boards. And then there's possibilities of shaping pre-existing curricula to use in the context of that application. But then there's another path, which is a little trickier, I think, to consider. And I think it's more theoretical, I think it's more philosophical, and it demands really trying to understand the interests of, say, the student with respect to these technologies. But the impulse is to try to control the use, right? All the students in the class have cell phones and they're all texting one another throughout the class, right? So the sort of problem is, how do we stop them? But and it's just a kind of reiteration of an old problem. Which you could write notes and pass them to one another. This is more discrete. So the technology facilitates, which is already a kind of interest amongst students, which is to kind of talk with one another, given that what's happening in the class is not all that fascinating to them. So I wonder if there should be some approach to this technology which kind of grows around an interest that's already there, rather than take the technology, take the curriculum, and like squeeze it into it, and then here kids, do you love these toys? So now we'll give these to you, and you'll learn that way.
And so, taking what people are doing with teacher educators as an example of how we diffuse digital technologies in education is probably a very limited perspective. We might see a lot more interesting things going on in classrooms where people have sort of more authority through their experience and seniority to take things a step further, as it were. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
The other aspect you might relate to the group, the CREATE group, is your work as a creative writer and as a novelist, and how your work was digitized, or how technology played a major role in your creative writing.
Well,
and the whole idea of arts-based research, how it impacts the teacher education program.
I had a quick question I was interested in is looking at connecting, and I think some of this has been done, work around digital literacies with media education. I guess I talk a lot to youth working on Twitter or Facebook, online, but in terms of deconstructing some of the commercial implications of that, and as well as, for example, when you're Googling that, it's also a way for advertisers to be able to niche, more, niche market.
Yes.
That some of those issues aren't necessarily readily apparent, and our culture's so saturated with it that it's become incredibly natural. It's just like, well, I'm just using the tool, but there's not much discussion of the values and assumptions of that tool that are embedded in that tool in and of itself, right? That part of that tool is things like, connecting with issues around search engine optimization or whatever. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that in terms of connecting use of various tools and creation of tools with some of the issues around marketing and deconstructing the values and assumptions, not seeing them as neutral.
I think it isn't neutral. It's kind of interesting. I had some reflections about the way in which it impacts on community, for instance. Community is one of the key kind of gathering terms for the development of an advancement of these applications and tools. I was thinking about it a little bit, about its history. Starting with in the 70s with video technology, when that became more broadly available and offered up as an affordable alternative to film for people who are doing documentary in particular. And there was at the time a lot of feminists, it seemed, that were really kind of keen on taking up this technology and using it because it was affordable, it was available, and it spawned certain types of communities around them, or NGOs and organizations, etc. So when the internet kind of started to reach a certain kind of critical mass in the 90s, there's a great deal of interest in news groups, chat things, when it was mostly still a text-based kind of experience. Some graphics, but very, very few. So you have to wait for the image to kind of load in. So a lot of community rose in that usage of it as well. and some of the early bulletin board stuff would be in support of topics, like a variety of topics, but also TV shows. Like when The Simpsons came on, there's a bulletin board for The Simpsons. People go on there and they would talk about the episodes. They would talk about the little thing at the beginning where you would like talk in and all of that. And there was a lot of people who sort of formed friendships and relationships there, but also it became a kind of a data mining field for the creators. So they would consult with the bulletin board for ideas for episodes. So it became for them an opportunity to almost like free labor. Because they're getting, it's like you have a pool of writers out there that you can cull ideas from without actually paying them anything other than attention. There's also an interesting capability for play there too, so you wouldn't want to necessarily foreclose.
No, not at all. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is getting away from the dichotomy of, good versus evil, and sort of looking at, how do you have the discussions, not valorize it as this is great, it's going to change education, we're all going to be inclusive, and isn't it wonderful? And on the other hand, not doing it's terrible, it's horrible, children can't read or anything. So it's, I think it's coming up with a more nuanced perspective that's going to be the challenge in the teacher ed class, right?
What is it? Is it just a question of facility with tools, being able to use these, or is there in some way that their level of comprehension, interest with respect to learning is being accelerated, or?
I don't think it's an and/or answer. I think that the facility with tools drives the facility, the understanding drives the interest.
I think that what we can get our teacher candidates to be thinking about is the changing social environment. I mean, the power of these media around children and youth is so strong. They don't need to be doing this necessarily, I don't think, in school, but to be posing the big questions about it seems to me what's critical. And I do worry about the gap. I mean, for your question, I worry about the gap between rich and poor, because I know in the school where my kids are, they don't have a lot of technology, but most of the kids seem to have access to it. So,
but I'm sure it has some sort of real measurable pedagogical impact when there's that much of a disconnect between what their worlds look like, their social worlds, their home worlds, in some ways, their pedagogical worlds outside of the school and what the school is capable of providing them with.
I think there's a conversation here about formal and informal uses of technology, and just because the students, this is what we found at BCIT, students use Facebook. They don't want their teachers to use Facebook to create community in the classroom. There's sort of this idea that we need to co-opt what they're doing outside the classroom. Somehow there's going to be pedagogical importance to that, but really we found that wasn't the case at all. And I think we have to be careful there, because clearly there are really good uses of technology that students might be using outside the classroom, like blogs. I mean, blogs are a great way to teach a blended course. But do we need to push our students into a CMS that the institution pays $1 million a year for, when every single one of our students has cell phones, and we can set up some sort of texting architecture or whatever it is. So I think
that's part of the class used to be afterwards, when you would go to the pub or to the coffee house or whatever for a drink, and kind of talk about the class, talk extemporaneously about your interest in the class, and etc. So I think there's some interest in trying to recreate to create that kind of effect. The informal moment of when you're discussing after the class, and creating chat capabilities so people can asynchronously kind of discuss topics related to the class. And it's a good idea, but I think one of the reasons why it fails is it's because it's attempting to fabricate community.
This idea of digitalizing, did you want to?
Well, I was thinking about it in a variety of contexts. Again, some of which have come up for teacher education, but I was thinking about how it's deployed with regard to community, like the idea of digital community, digital identity, digital art, digital literacy. like literacy in the context of digital literacy, I think frees up the term literacy in a certain kind of way. So I was thinking about digital as a thing that does have currency and how it's exchanged within a variety of different markets. You know, educational markets, yes, industrial markets, etc.
Yeah. So the question that raises for me is, as educators, how do we develop the criteria that allow people to express what they've learned in different literacies when we've traditionally been so print oriented. So for example, I taught a course in policy and some of my students wanted to submit a video to show what they've learned, and I realized I hadn't really thought through how am I going to evaluate that?
Yeah, right.
By what criteria will I judge that to be a success? And how?
You have a sense of what it takes to produce 20,000 words,
Yeah.
but what does it take to produce 20 good minutes of video?
Yeah.
Or what does it take to produce a web page that's kind of dynamic and interesting?
Right. Yeah.
And these are all really good questions. It kind of demands teachers be sort of like polyglots in a different
It does.
sense of the word.
Yeah.